All right, all right. It's not ESPN's 30 for 30, but it is my 98 for 98, the 98 seasons in the history of the New York Football Giants. We're going to try to get it done in 98 days. Probably not going to happen. I'm hoping to get it done before the beginning of the regular season starts, which is September 10th against the Cowboys. And we're forging our way ahead. We're heading into the middle of the 60s here. We're in 1963, which just happened to be the 39th season in the history of the New York Football Giants. 39th season in the history of the Giants, 44th season in the history of the NFL. The Giants started in 1925. The NFL started in 1920, so therefore the Giants are 5 years younger than the NFL. 63 was I got it's my missing ring number 7, and we'll go over more. Oh my goodness, and we'll go over that a little bit as we reach the championship game. It was all it was a changing of the guard, shall we say? It was a different season. JFK was assassinated. This was also the end of an, as you see in this thumbnail, the end of an era. I mean, just special times for Giants football. That then from 56 to 63, within those 8 years there, the Giants went to 6 championship games. Only 57 and 60 were the only 2 years that they didn't go to championship games. Really special. Also a nice special era for Giants football as well, because you figure from 1933 to 63, 31 years. 31 years. Let's count that in. 31 years. That's when the championship game started, from 33 to 63. So 31 years. Giants went to the championship game in 33, 34, 35, 38, 39, 41, 44, 46. Then took a little time off and went from 46 to 56, 58, 59, 61, 62, 63. So in 31, I mean, this is like Tom Brady-ish kind of, right? Kind of eerie, right? So in 31 years, the Giants went to 14 championship games. Not only did they go to 14 championship games, but they also went to 2 playoff games, because at the end of the seasons, they were tied 1 year with the Redskins, another year with the Cleveland Browns, to see who'd go to the championship game. So, I mean, if you got the 14 championship games, 2 additional playoff games, I mean, just, sets like 16 seasons out of 31. So, obviously, even I'm intelligent enough to figure out that's more than half of the, special time. I mean, unfortunately, the Giants lost the 2 playoff games, right? Then out of the 14 championship games, they were only 3-11. So basically, between the championship games and the playoff games, they were 3-13. Oh my God! But regardless, it is what it is. Ain't nothing you can do about it. But in order to be in those 14 championship games, 2 playoff games, you got to have some good teams, got to have some good players, some good coaching, good records, good seasons. And the Giants had a lot of that. Unfortunately, that was coming to an end. Once we go to 1964, which I'll do tomorrow, we're going to enter the wilderness years, the years of the no playoffs, no championships. We're going to go from 1964 to 1980 with no playoffs. Long time. The next time they make the playoffs, Lawrence Taylor was a rookie. So we're going to go from 1964, which is my birth date, year of my birth, to 1981 to find their next playoff berth. So the Giants in 1963, their defense was good. It was solid, very solid defense. They had a bunch of, the guys obviously were still around for the most part. Rosie Greer wasn't there anymore. They traded him away to the Rams. They had a good, solid defense. the Bears, who they played in the championship, was one of the best defenses of all time. The Bears gave up like a little more than 10 points a game. Unbelievable defense. Really, really good. Y.A. Tittle, this would be his second to last season, 1963, broke his own record. In 1962, he threw 33 touchdown passes. Well, he beat that in 1963, threw for 36 touchdown passes, which would stand up until the 80s. So, I mean, the Giants, their offense was really good, really, really potent. As I said, unfortunately, this would be like the end of an era. I mean, the Giants started trading away some players. They traded away their defensive tackle, Dick Modzelewski. They traded away Sam Huff. They traded away Rosie Greer after 62. So basically, after within 62 to 64, the Giants lost their traded away the two defensive tackles, right? And their middle linebacker, right? The heart and soul of the defense, right? They're gone. Andy Robustelli was really getting up there in age. So after 64, he retired. A lot of the linebackers started changing, and it was just, and as we're going to see in the draft, it's going to be an unfortunate, eerie. The drafts were just barren wastelands for the Giants. They were not replacing their players with good players. They were, they couldn't draft. There's two guys they drafted in this year's draft in 1963 NFL draft. One was a Hall of Famer, and another one is rather near and dear to our hearts, who we were bringing up in the news within the past week. Well, we'll go over more of that in a bit, but the drafts were just not good. As I said, the stars they had in the 50s and in the early 60s were starting to get old. And you got to start replacing them. And they just were not doing that in the draft. And, this was a common theme until pretty much George Young came around in 1979. He started drafting the guys, right? He got Phil Simms. And, we in the 70s, the Giants were drafting some decent defensive players. But, as far as offense, they were just, the cup was, the cupboard was getting bare. They just were not replacing their players, and they paid for it dearly for years. So the 1963 season, missing ring number 7 for the New York Giants. Here we go. 1963 NFL season was the 44th regular season in the history of the National Football League, 44th for the NFL, 39th for the New York Giants. On April 17th, NFL Commissioner Pete Rozelle suspended Green Bay Packers running back Paul Hornung and the Detroit Lions defensive tackle Alex Karras indefinitely for gambling on their own teams, as well as other NFL games. Hornung and Karras would miss the entire season, while 5 of Karras' teammates were fined $2,000 each for placing bets on a game in which they did not participate. This was the final decision of the 37-man roster. It was expanded to 40. This was the final season of the 37-man roster. It was expanded to 40 in 1964, so the rosters were starting to expand. The season ended with the Chicago Bears defeating the New York Giants at Wrigley Field in the NFL championship game, 14-10. The draft, the 1963 NFL draft, was held on December 3rd, 1962 at Chicago's Sheraton Hotel and Towers. With the first overall pick, the Los Angeles Rams selected quarterback Terry Baker. Okay. We missed on that one. From Oregon State, he might have been a Heisman Trophy winner, but he wasn't a Heisman Trophy winner in the NFL, I can tell you that much. The regular season, the effects of the JFK assassination. In week 11, on November 24th, just 2 days after the assassination of President Kennedy, the NFL played its normal schedule of games. League Commissioner Pete Rozelle said about playing the games. It has been traditional in sports for athletes to perform in times of great personal tragedy. Football was Mr. Kennedy's game. He thrived on competition. Attendance at the games went unaffected despite the assassination. Although the choice to play the games was protested and Rozelle had also eventually regretted the decision, he stated that Kennedy's press secretary, Pierre Salinger, had urged him to allow the games to be played. However, the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Redskins had sought postponement of the games. Eventually, the game between the two teams in Philadelphia saw acts of kindness from both sides. Before the game, each of the Eagles players, very, very classy, contributed $50 to the family of the Dallas police officer J.D. Tippett, who was killed by the assassin Lee Harvey Oswald. After the game ended, players on the Redskins asked Coach Bill McPeak to send the game ball to the White House, thanking Rozelle for allowing the games to be played that weekend, saying that they were playing for Mr. President Kennedy and in his memory. Very classy. However, no NFL games were telecast since on the afternoon of the 22nd, just after the president had been pronounced dead, CBS President Frank Stanton ordered that all regular programming be preempted until after Mr. Kennedy was buried. Normal programming, including the NFL, was replaced by non-stop news coverage, broadcast without commercials. No commercials, and it wasn't 24 hours a day back then. It didn't have the TV. Usually, like around midnight, they cut off. But so none of the games were broadcasted that weekend. So the conference races, they went kind of pretty much down to the wire. Really, some exciting races here. Both conference races were undecided until the final games of the regular season. In the Eastern, the Browns were 7-1-0 after 8 games. But on November 10th, the Browns lost 9-7 at Pittsburgh, while the Giants beat the Eagles 42-14 to tie the Browns. They were both 7-2. When the Giants won again and the Browns lost, the Giants then held the lead. The Western race was close as well. The Bears were 5-0 and the Packers were 4-1 entering Week 6. Green Bay won at St. Louis 30-7, and while Chicago lost 20-14 at San Francisco, that would be the Bears' only loss all season. They were all, I think, 11-1-2. Woo! Let's see. Then after the Bears lost at San Francisco, the Packers tied the Bears for the lead. They were both 5-1. Both teams continued to win because remember, the 1962 Green Bay Packers only lost one game all year. They were 13-1. And just to go to show you, this year the Packers were 11-2. 11-2 and didn't even make the championship game because the Bears were 11-1. The Bears were 11-1 and had 2 ties. The Packers were 11-2-1. So the Packers lost both games this year to the Bears, both games that they lost. But they only had 2 losses and they couldn't even make a championship game. Let's see here. In Week 12, Green Bay win was denied when the Lions tied the game 13-13 with a last-minute touchdown in Detroit's Thanksgiving Day game. So if they didn't tie, the Packers would have been 12-2. Still wouldn't have given them the title because they were going by winning percentage. But let's see here. Week 13 saw both the Bears and the Packers winning, while Cleveland lost to Detroit 38-10, and New York won 44-14 over Washington. But at 10-3-0, New York was trailed by Pittsburgh, which had an unusual 7-3-3 record, and the final game of the season would match the Steelers and the Giants at Yankee Stadium. Under the rules of the day, ties were discarded. A Pittsburgh win over the Giants would have resulted with the Giants at 10-4, and the Steelers would have been 8-3. The Steelers at 8-3 would have won the division because they would have had a better winning percentage. So the last game of the season in Yankee Stadium, Steelers won. Steelers would have been 8-3-3. Basically, they would have been 8-3. They would have had a winning percentage of 727. The Giants would have fall to 10-4. Giants would have had more wins, but they would also had that one extra loss. So their winning percentage would have been 714. So the Pittsburgh Steelers, with a record of 8-3-3, would have gone to the championship game instead of the Giants, who were 10-4. The Steelers had won the first meeting in Pittsburgh 31-0 early on. The Giants lost that one early, yeah. In a game that decided the conference title, New York beat Pittsburgh 33-17, and the Steelers fell to fourth. They could have won the division, but they lost. They fell to fourth place. In that game, many people say it was a one-handed catch by Frank Gifford, which the Giants were winning 16-10. They had the ball kind of deep in their own territory. Wyatt Tittle threw a pass to Frank Gifford, who was being covered rather well. Frank was kind of cutting across the middle, I believe it was, and Wyatt Tittle kind of led him. But Frank put his arm out, his one hand out, and basically caught the ball one-handed and pulled it in. And that got the Giants going once again, because the Giants were up 16-3. Steelers scored, make it 16-10. The Giants are in their own territory. If they got to punt the ball, maybe the Steelers get the ball back, change the whole complex of the game and all. But that one-handed catch by Frank Gifford, he pulled it in, got a big play out of it, and it turned the tide, and the Giants wind up going on to victory from there. So a lot of people seem to point that play out. Because also don't forget, Frank Gifford was injured in 1960. Up until that, he was a receiver. He could catch the ball, but he was basically a running back. Once he got injured in 1960, he missed the whole rest of 1961 due to his injuries. Frank Gifford played 62, 63, and 64, all as a wide receiver. He wasn't, I'd have to look, but I'm sure he was handed the ball maybe on a sweep or something like that, but he didn't really line up in the backfield anymore. He was basically a wide receiver. In the Western race, Green Bay needed to win on the road and for Chicago to lose at home. The Packers played Saturday at Kezar Stadium in San Francisco and beat the league worst 49ers 21-17. However, the Bears' 24-14 win over Detroit at Wrigley on Sunday afternoon was announced to the Packers during their flight home, ending their pursuit of a third consecutive league title. The Packers were just unbelievable since 1961. Since 1962, if you talk to some historians and all, however many of them are still left, but I feel that 62 Packer team was maybe the best team in NFL history. They were fantastic. So, and they only had 2 losses in 1963, and they still couldn't even make the championship game. And actually, if they did, it would have been the 3rd championship game in a row between the Packers and the Giants. Although the Packers' 11-2-1 record without Horning was the second best in the league and one of the best in their history, the 2 losses to Chicago kept them in second place in the West. Green Bay played in the Consolation Playoff Bowl in Miami against East runner-up Cleveland on January 5th, and they beat Cleveland 40-23, I think it was. Let me see here. Yep, 40-23. Had the Playoff Bowl to see which team came in 3rd place for the whole league. So the Bears came in first. The Giants lost the championship game, so they were in second place. And the Packers went third because they won the playoff bowl. Let's see here. Most valuable player went to Wyatt Tittle, the quarterback of the Giants, basically because of his 36 touchdown passes. Coach of the year went to George Halas of Chicago. They had a phenomenal season. Absolutely phenomenal. Let's see, we'll go to the draft real fast here. I'm just going to show you. It was just like barren wasteland for the Giants. But there was 20 rounds, but after we go through the first 10 picks, barren wasteland for the Giants. We're going to go to rounds 19 and 20. All right, we'll pick up the action there. Okay. Let's see here. Round 1, Giants didn't have a pick. They traded away to the Cardinals. All right. Round 2. The Giants took Frank Lasky, a tackle from Florida. Round 3, Dick Skelly, a back from Florida. Another Florida person. Let's see, round 4, they didn't have a pick. Round 5, they had 2 picks. They had Dave Hill, a tackle from Auburn, and they had took Lou Slabby, a back from Pittsburgh. Round 6, Bob Petrich, a tackle from West Texas State. Bert Petkus, a guard from Northwestern in round 7. Round 8, they took Dave Herman, a guard from Michigan State, who wound up playing for the Jets and winning a Super Bowl with the Jets. Round 9, Bob Taylor, a tackle from Maryland Eastern Shore. There you go. That powerhouse, Maryland Eastern Shore University. Oh, my goodness. And it's round 10, another player that played for the Jets. They took Mike Talaferro, a quarterback from Illinois. And see, I think he did he play for their Super Bowl team? No. Wow, he missed out by 1 year. Instead of playing for the Giants, he played his whole career with the Jets, the Patriots, and the Bills. And he finishes his career with the Houston Texans of the WFL in 1974, but the World Football League. But he played for the Jets from 64 to 67. Had he made it to 68, he would have got himself a championship ring because they won Super Bowl III, but it was not meant to be. But basically, the first 10 picks, absolutely total waste. Absolute total waste. Pretty much were rounds 11 to 18, too. Absolute total waste of picks. They didn't replace anybody. And this is why, starting in 1964, they really started suffering big time. All right, so we're going to go to round 19 and round 20. Round 19, they took some guy by the name of Buck Buchanan, who just happened to wind up becoming a Hall of Famer, defensive tackle. But unfortunately, he wound up playing for the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs took him number 1 overall in their draft. Giants waited to round 19. Somebody wound up playing for the Chiefs. And from what I read, Buck Buchanan, first black player ever to be taken number 1 in a draft. NFL / or AFL. First black player ever. And he was 6'7", 280 pounds, defensive tackle, mean mofo. He could have helped the Giants. Oh, he was an Iron Man. He didn't miss any games. What a phenomenal player he was. Great pick by the Kansas City Chiefs. Fortunately, the dingbat Giants waited to round 19 to get him, but I don't even know. I mean, if the Giants took him in round 1, I don't even know if he would have played for the Giants or not, or the Chiefs. Who knows? But he was a phenomenal player. The Giants took him in round 19, but he wanted to play his whole career with from 63 from 1963 to 1973. He played his entire career with the Kansas City Chiefs. But then round 20 was the only guy the whole draft that really did anything at all for the Giants. A very special player indeed. We happen to know him because sadly his name became in the news this past week, very sadly, because of his death. They took Homer Jones, round 20, back from Texas Southern. And he didn't play because he was injured. He was also drafted by the Houston Oilers, Homer Jones. He injured his knee in training camp. So actually, he never played. He wasn't not going to play for the Giants. He injured his knee. Then the Oilers released him. From what I'm reading, Homer Jones called the Giants up and asked if they were still interested. So they sent him a bus ticket and they paid for his knee surgery. And he came back and he played the final few games of 64. Most of the time in 64, he was rehabbing from his knee injury. And so he played only very sparingly. He only had 4 receptions in 1964, but he did get to catch passes from Y.A. Tittle. Very, very cool. But then in 1965, he was with the Giants from 65, 69. He had a fantastic season in 1967 when we traded for Fran Tarkenton. He had 13 touchdown receptions. Phenomenal. I mean, he averaged over 22 yards of reception. What a phenomenal player. But unfortunately, knee injuries just started catching up with him. We traded him to the Browns after 1970. He only played with the Browns for 1 year. They either traded him to the Cardinals or he left and went to the Cardinals, and he had to retire because it's just his knees. He didn't play for the Cardinals at all in 1971, but I think he went to their team. He tried out for him or whatever, but his injuries, his knee or knees were just too badly banged up, so he couldn't play anymore, sadly. But Homer Jones was the only player in this whole draft. Basically, he did much of anything at all for the New York Giants. So once again, the cupboard was getting bare. We were trading guys away. Guys were getting old, and we need to replace them, and we were not doing it. That's why we started heading into the wilderness years, the years without any playoff appearances. So that was the 1963 NFL draft. But, I mean, if we go, we look here, I mean, the Giants, great offensive year. Might have been one of the best in their history. The Giants averaged 32 points per game. And they scored 448 points in 14 games. 32 points a game they averaged, which was number one in the whole NFL that season. Now, you're averaging over 30 points a game. Could you imagine if the Giants were averaging 32 points a game now with the defense that they got? Right? Oh, we're going deep in the playoffs then. Oh, yeah. But they gave up 20 points per game, which was, it was fifth best back then. It wasn't, I mean, the Bears had the best. The Bears averaged giving up. The Giants gave up 280 points. The Bears, just to show you a comparison, gave up 144. The Bears gave up half the amount of points the Giants did. The Bears gave up 10.3 points per game. They only scored 21. So something had to give when they went to the championship game, right? The Bears only scored 21. The Giants only gave up 20. So very even there. The Giants scored 32. The Bears only gave up 10. So something had to give. And unfortunately, it was what gave was the Giants offense. Yeah. But, I mean, Wyatt Tittle was, phenomenal. This was like obviously his best season. I mean, he just, what did he have? He had 36 touchdown passes, only 14 interceptions, 60.2% pass completion. Just really great season. The Giants intercepted 34 passes. Let's see, running the ball. Nothing special. The Giants averaged 3.9 yards per carry. They gave up 4.1. Nothing special. The Giants only scored 12 rushing touchdowns because they had so many passing touchdowns. Between Tittle and Glenn Griffin, that was their backup. and they had Ralph Guglielmi, who they drafted, I believe, in the 1962 draft. He wasn't very good either. The Giants had with 39 touchdown passes between those quarterbacks for the season. So the Giants weren't much of a, let's see, they ran the ball 453 times. They threw the ball 426. So they were almost 50-50 as far as throwing the ball and running the ball. They ran the ball just a little bit more. But, I mean, obviously they scored more of their points, a lot more of their points on, actually they scored almost 3 times the amount of touchdowns with passing than they did running. So, I mean, I said their defense was nothing super spectacular, but it was good enough with their offense. The way they could score points, their defense was plenty good enough. I said they only gave up 20. They gave up 20 points a game, but they scored 32. Now, I said the final game of the season, the Pittsburgh Steelers game, they won 33-17. The Giants, they won the first game of the season. They beat the Baltimore Colts 37-28 in Baltimore. Then they lost their second game of the season against the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh, 31-0. Now, this is, the Giants shared Yankee Stadium with the New York Yankees. The Giants, for the most part, except I think for 1961, they started every season on the road. Anywhere from their first 2 to their first 4 games were always on the road. This was no exception. Their first 4 games of the season were on the road. Week 3, Sunday, September 29th, in Philadelphia, they won 37-14. Week 4, Sunday, October 6th, in Washington, they won 24-14. So they played 4 games on the road. They're 3-1 coming home. they lose to the Cleveland Browns, 35-24. So now they're 3-2. But what did they do? They pretty much won almost every other game after that. They had a nice streak going. The following week, on Sunday, October 20th, Dallas Cowboys came to town. The Giants won 37-21. Now the Giants are 4-2. Then they went on the road to play Cleveland, who just beat them, right, the week before, or 2 weeks before. The Cleveland came to Yankee Stadium and beat the Giants. Well, the Giants went on the road and played in Cleveland, and the Giants won 33-6. So now the Giants are 5-2. St. Louis Cardinals, the Giants went to play St. Louis in St. Louis. Giants won 38-21 on Sunday, November 3rd. So now the Giants are 6-2. Then they had 3 home games. They played Philadelphia at home on Sunday, November 10th. They won 42-14. Now they're 7-2. Then they played the San Francisco 49ers on Sunday, November 17th. They beat them 48-14. Now the Giants are 8-2. Then the team that they just beat, the Cardinals, on the road in St. Louis, they beat them 38-21. Well, now the Cardinals came to New York to play the Giants at Yankee Stadium, and the Cardinals won 24-17. So that was on Sunday, November 24th. So now the Giants are 8-3. Dropped them down. Now they're tied with the Browns. They both got 3 losses, right? So it's paramount that the Giants win. Well, they played the Cowboys in Dallas on Sunday, December 1st, and the Giants would win 34-27. So now the Giants are 9-3. Then the last 2 games of the season were at home, which is one of the nice things about playing all those games on the road early on. A lot of your games toward the end of the season, obviously, are all at home. So the last 2 games of the season are at home for the Giants. The Giants are 9-3. So on Sunday, December 8th, the Redskins come to town. The Giants pummel them 44-14. Now the Giants are 10-3. So it comes down to the last game of the season. The Giants, if the Giants win, they win the division or their conference. If the Steelers win, because the Steelers would have been 8-3 and the Giants would have been 10-4. The Steelers would have been a winning percentage. But the Giants won 33-17. And to finish 11-3, and the Pittsburgh Steelers fell to 4th place. So the Giants were 11-3, and the Cleveland Browns wound up 10-4. The Cleveland Browns, let's see, they were doing good early on, and then when did they lose their 4th game? They lost the second last week of the season. They lost to the Lions 38-10, which gave them their 4th loss. So. I mean, the Browns were right there. The Browns were right there. The Steelers were right there. So it was really, really an exciting, an exciting season because, I mean, the Giants, only had the few losses. And they only had 3 losses, and they almost didn't win their conference. The Green Bay Packers only had 2 losses, and they didn't win their conference. So it came right down to the last week. So it was really exciting, very, very exciting football. The thing what makes this, the missing, what I call the missing ring season, number 7. Now, I'm not going to go over the other seasons, all the other 6 seasons, but what made this it was played in Chicago. It was cold. You can see, if you ever see the highlights of this game, I mean, it just, every time a person takes a breath, you can just see steam coming out of the mouth. It was cold. It was the field was icy. It was a lot of guys played in sneakers because it was frozen turf. It was tough to get good traction on that and everything. But what made it so difficult was the Giants, scored 10 points. The Bears scored 14, so obviously the Bears won. The 2 touchdowns the Bears scored were directly or indirectly off of 2 interceptions. The 2 passes the Giants had 5 interceptions. The Giants had 6 turnovers in this game, which didn't help their cause either. The Bears only had 2. But the Giants threw the 2 interceptions that led basically to the Bears' 2 touchdowns were on screen passes. Y.A. Tittle was also injured during this game as well, too. He took 2 shots to his knee. the first one he got hit on, and then I believe it was like later on in the second quarter, toward the end of the second quarter, he got one of the linebackers for the Giants, for the Bears, came in and hit him right in his knee, and he was limping off the field, and he missed a couple series. I'll read this. Let's see if I can find it here. He got. Let's see. Yeah. In the second quarter, the Giants retook the lead 10-7 on a 13-yard field goal, but on New York's next drive, Kwity Tittle re-injured his left knee on another hit by Morris, one of their linebackers. He came in, he fell, and he just hit him right in his left knee. Now, of course, obviously nowadays, that wouldn't happen. Both of the shots were to his left leg, to his lower. Would have been, if that was today, both of them would have been 15-yard penalties. The Giants would have moved closer, right? But so with Tittle out for 2 possessions, the Giants struggled, only able to advance 2 yards in 7 plays. Ali Sherman, the Giants coach, even punted on 3rd down, showing no confidence in their backup, Glenn Griffin. The score remained 10-7 at halftime. Tittle came back in the 3rd period, but he needed cortisone shot, Novocaine, and then heavy taping and bandaging to continue. So basically, he was hobbled pretty much for the rest of the game, because of the 2 shots he took to his knee. For the rest of the game, he was forced to throw off his back foot. An interception on another screen pass by the Bears' Ed O'Bradovich was brought deep into the Giants' territory, setting up Wade's 1-yard touchdown run. So basically, they scored on 2 quarterback sneaks. I think one was a 2-yard one. 2? Yeah. One was a 2-yarder, and one the second one, the game-winning one, was on a 1-yard one. 1-yard quarterback sneak. Nobody scored in the 4th quarter. But the first one was intercepted. Let's see. Later in the period, Larry Morris hit Tittle, his left knee. Morris hit Tittle's knee. The same low-life loser hit Tittle's knee 2 times. And the second time, Tittle's being helped on. I don't know if Alex Webster's like holding his arm and Tittle's like limping off the field, and Morris is just standing there like looking at him. You can see the low-life loser just staring at him after he hit him in another cheap shot in his knee for the second time. What a low-life. The injured Tittle was much less effective for the rest of the game. After Del Schaffner failed to hang on to a Tittle pass, and it was another one. Del Schaffner was open in the end zone, and Tittle threw the ball just a little too high, and Del Schaffner was wide open in the end zone, bounced off his hands and fell incomplete. Let's see. Morris intercepted a Kwity Tittle screen pass and returned the ball 61 yards to the Giants' 6-yard line. 2 plays later, Wade scored on a touchdown on a 2-yard quarterback sneak. So basically, Morris picked off a pass, a screen pass, ran it back to the Giants' 6. Ed O'Bradovich picked the pass off and ran it back to the Giants' 15 or 14-yard line. So the only way the Bears scored points, they picked off 2 screen passes, and they had to go a grand total like 20 yards for their 2 touchdowns. Those are the only points that the Bears scored on screen passes. Now, what makes is that the defensive coordinator for the Bears was George Allen, phenomenal coach. When he became a head coach, he coached the Rams from 66 to 70. Then from 71 to 77, he was the head coach of the Washington Redskins. He never had a losing season. He was a very, very good coach. But he was their defensive coordinator. And they really did a great job scouting, because a lot of the Giants like to throw the ball deep. But in bad weather and cold and all that, it was tough to throw the ball deep. The Giants also did very well throwing screen passes. And the Bears really, I'm sure with George Allen, I'm sure they dug in deep into the film and all of that. And they they made sure that the Giants' screen plays were not going to beat them this day, and they didn't. The Giants had a couple of successful screen passes in this game, but for the most part, it was like anytime Tittle dropped back to pass, on the second interception, the defensive tackle Ed O'Bradovich was out there. It was a screen pass. You're supposed to suck the players in, and then you dump the ball over their head, and you catch the ball. The running back catches the ball, and he takes off. No, I mean, on these intercepted passes, the Bears were out there. They were like anticipating it. The first one, when Morris picked it off and ran it all the way back to the 6-yard line, the ball, it was a screen pass. It was like overthrown. There was like a couple Bear players out there. One of them was Morris. The pass was thrown out there. Morris comes screaming in, it was overthrown, picked it off and ran all the way back to the 6-yard line. It was just, I'm sure with film work and everything, they diagnosed, they saw the way the Giants do their screen passes, and they were ready for that, and they were not going to lose to the Giants by their screen passes. I can't say the Giants lived and died by their screen passes because, obviously they like to throw the ball deep too. You got Del Schaffner and Frank Gifford to throw passes to. But on a day like with the weather being as cold as it all was and everything, it was not the best weather to throw ball deep. So the Giants, ran. They passed the ball up a lot more on screens, and the Bears were ready for it. And it just kind of gets you because it's like, you're throwing not even just one interception on a screen pass, 2 interceptions on screen passes, and they run them down inside the 20-yard line. And a couple plays later, they score touchdowns, and it's like on a screen pass. It's not like the ball, the ball got tipped up in the air, or they threw the ball 20, 30 yards downfield, and the guy comes and steps in front of it and picks it off, or makes a good play, or it's just on a screen, 2 screen passes. And it said the second one, Ed O'Bradovich was out there. He's throwing a screen because I'm sure Tittle's knee being injured didn't help. But it's like throwing interceptions on screen passes. It's like, oh my, it's just so demoralizing. That's the only way the Bears, I believe, missed 2 field goal attempts. But the only way they scored any of their points was these intercept screen. Yeah. If you just threw the ball into the ground, the Bears don't score a point. The Giants wind up winning. Or if only one of them gets picked off and run back, the Giants win 10-7. Tittle also threw 2 interceptions in the end zone. One of them was early. It was like maybe in the third quarter or so. He threw an interception in the end zone. The Giants were in Chicago territory. He threw a pass. I'm sure once again his knee was injured. So I'm sure that didn't help the flight of the ball, but he got intercepted in the end zone for a touchback. He also threw an interception basically in the second to last play of the game, with like after 2 seconds were left after the ball got picked off. I think Frank Gifford was down there. He just, because the Giants had to score a touchdown. They got down around like the Bears' 35-yard line, somewhere around 30, around there. So Tittle, with the play started with 10 seconds, so it left in the game. So he had to throw the ball into the end zone, which he did, and got picked off. But just another one of those gut punches that, it's just such a shame. The Giants, neither team really got a lot of yardage. The Giants, does it have it here? The Giants outgained the Bears. Let's see here. Box score. They went up losing 14-10. The Giants, let's see, outgained them 268 yards to 222. The Bears ran the ball 31 times for 93 yards. They ran the ball. They got 3 yards a carry. They scored 2 touchdowns, both with quarterback sneaks. The Giants ran the ball 38 times for 128 yards. But Tittle, because of the bad weather and his left knee, which he had to, dropping back to pass, he had to throw the ball off his back leg, his right leg. So he was 11 out of 30, and he threw 5 interceptions. And the Giants also lost a fumble. So the Giants had 6 turnovers compared to only 2 for the Bears. And, so basically I said the only way the Bears scored their points were off of interceptions from screen passes. And just kind of, it's I don't know. It's just like a gut punch. It's like, just throw the ball into the ground. I mean, if it's not there, if it ain't there, just throw the ball at the feet of the guy, or just throw it whatever out of us, whatever. But I mean, got picked off, one run back to the 15, and the other one got run back to the 6, and that was the only way that the Bears scored their points in this championship game. And just another tough loss for the Giants in the championship game. It was just not meant to be, and the Bears wound up winning 14-10. But so basically, it was a good season for the Giants. They got to another championship game. They lost a tough one. If things went better their way, they could have won, but they lost 14-10 to the Chicago Bears, who were that year were a very good team. But it's the Bears were the Giants. You're not going to hear much of anything from the Bears until the 1970s when they draft some guy by the name of Walter Payton. So the Bears were not very good after 63 either. So, but the other thing, a sad thing is that after 63, all those championships and everything for the Giants, now we hit the 1964, and it just goes downhill from there. Well, that wraps up the 1963 season for the New York Giants, the missing ring number 7. So when I come back again tomorrow, we're going to start the beginning of the wilderness years with the 1964 season, which just happened to be the 40th season in history of the New York Giants. I'll see you then.